I want to welcome everyone. I'm Bob Frank. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I wanted to let you know we're streaming this live, so just FYI. This is a little like when I sit on the podium during graduation and your face is occasionally on this giant screen, so you really have to watch what you're doing with your hands. So not quite to that level, but I just wanted to let you know we are making this accessible. So hello to any folks out there who might be joining us remotely. I'm really pleased that to be able to do this session today about networking. So I'm grateful not only to the panelists who have joined us, but to students too, because we couldn't do this if one of those groups didn't show up. So we're going to start here by having folks introduce themselves. Maybe we could just do names first, then they're going to do a little bit of biography. But we thought that it would be nice if you introduced yourselves too. So actually, maybe we could start with you, and then we'll loop around to have the panelists. So, and you're, yeah, year and.
I'm Julie Conrad. I'm an 04 graduate with Sociology Criminology.
Steve Ellis, I'm a 1982 graduate, political science.
Misha Ayla Burris, I'm a 2009 graduate, political science pre-law.
Alan J. Rom, I'm a 1967 graduate, and I studied economics.
Okay, so Alan, you want to start with a little about what your life path has been?
I'll try and do it quickly. I graduated here in 1967, started law school in Cleveland, went for 2 years, and then because of Richard Nixon and the draft, I left for 2 years, went to Bolivia in the Peace Corps for 2 years, came back, finished up at Cleveland State, and then I got my first job as a lawyer in southern New Jersey through a fellowship with Howard University called the Reginald Heber Smith Fellowship to work with legal services. After a year there, I was able to transfer the fellowship and direct the Migrant Farm Worker Legal Services Project in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And after that, I stayed until 77 in Connecticut, and then I was able to get a job as staff counsel to the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law of the Boston Bar Association. I was there for 18 years. Then I went into a small private law office doing Fair Labor Standards Act work and specializing on overtime and unpaid wages. Then I went and directed a research civil rights organization called Massachusetts Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. It was an organization founded by the Harvard Law School class of 1958 in 1993, and the leader of that, who I got to meet and know very well, was Ralph Nader. And then after that, I went and I became the director of litigation at Legal Services of Central Massachusetts in Worcester. And after a year and a half there, I went to the Attorney General's office in the Civil Rights Division in Massachusetts. I was there for 3 years, and then I decided for the first time in my life, I've never had my own private practice, so I opened my own office in 2011, which I've been doing employment law, and I also work as a volunteer lawyer for an organization called Multicultural Education Training and Advocacy. It does nationwide legal services on behalf of children of limited English proficiency, and that's what I've been doing.
Hey, is that all? Thanks, guys.
My name's Misha Ayla, and I have to get hung up on some of the things that you said and just take a moment to say thank you for your service. There's so much about what he just said that I think is so incredibly admirable in terms of how you leverage your education and your passion. So you're a rubber meets the road kind of guy, and I just really, really respect that. For me, my lineage isn't so long in terms of, the jobs I've had and where I've been in my post-OU life. But particularly, the way networking has shaped my education was a little bit different because I was a student athlete. So not that being a student athlete limits your opportunities. In fact, it's the question I seem to get almost every time I apply for a job that my employers are most interested in is the fact that I was a 4-year varsity and all-conference student athlete. But it definitely made it a little bit harder to do things like internships and other things that were valuable. So during my time at OU, I was one of those people who was first generation college, really kind of thought, if I get good grades and if I swim really fast, the jobs will just be there. And that's really not how it works. So I was really involved on campus in a lot of student organizations. I don't need to reiterate it. We put it all online, and I'd hoped you guys would check that out. But in my post-OU time, I also went straight to law school during a very economically tough time. '09 was the height of the Great Recession. So I am one of those very stereotypical millennials who has really struggled in terms of the job world and has really struggled with the balance of finding good paying jobs while like having student loan debt. I didn't have any from undergrad, but I do have them from law school. So because my career path has always been how do I make law opposed to how do I practice law, most of my jobs and the way I network is very politically integrated, which I think kind of transcends any job you want to have, particularly in the business world. But for me, it's always been one job piggybacked off the other. So in law school, I took advantage of our externship program. And in a place like Columbus, Ohio, where there's a lot of government and business and everything's happening locally, I took advantage of opportunities through the school to work in the local city attorney's office and as well as the Ohio Senate. They have a legal counsel for the minority caucus. And from there, I did some work on the 2012 reelection campaign for Barack Obama. And from there was hired in U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown's office. Since then, I've now been working for a national nonprofit doing small business advocacy work, which made me really excited that you're also an entrepreneur. Those are my other favorite people. So I do a lot of small business advocacy, and I spend a lot of time working and being around job makers and employers.
Yes, Steve.
Yes, my name is Steve Ellis, and I graduated in 1982 with a degree in political science, and I just love OU.
Hey.
This is very unique to be a Bobcat, and you'll see that as you move on through your career. But I met my wife here, so we're both Bobcats. We have
Jealous.
2 daughters. They're both Bobcats too, so we're a full family of Bobcats. I've served on the College of Arts and Sciences Advisory Board before, and then I'm serving on the Ohio University Alumni Association Board of Directors as well. But I think we'll talk later on about networking and all.
Yeah.
It's a quick summary.
Julie Conrad, 04 graduate, Soc Crim. So post OU, I found myself working in a inpatient or residential center for convicted felons. It was a male and female facility where they were convicted felons, nonviolent, all drug and alcohol problems. And in this facility, it was focusing on sobriety, GEDs, substance abuse counseling, and getting them to be able to work through their addictions and get them back into the world and as functioning members of society. And I worked there for about 8 months before the inner social crime major came out at me and just kind of saw that it wasn't operating at its finest capabilities. Because we all, if you've taken any type of criminology or even sociology class, you know that it takes a lot more than 3 months in a facility like that to really turn the page. And the place started pumping people out just to get the grant money. So I said, this isn't for me. And you take a vested interest when you work in a place like that. You start to hear their stories and see how they got where they were at. And when you start to be more interested in it and you take interest in their lives, it's hard to watch the place they depend on not. So I said, all right, we're going to back away from this, and found myself at a collection agency. So similar caliber of people sometimes, but it was really all about leveraging the work I had done here and the social interactions you have with people. And you'll find that when you're on the phone with somebody talking to them about a credit card they haven't paid since 1985, it's very hard to get them to have a conversation with you. So you've got to find a way to interact and to relate to any type of situation that they've got going on in their own lives and start those conversations. And then once somebody feels like they can talk to you, and you're not just somebody on the other end of the phone, then you've started to build that relationship. So while I may have ended up in a non-conventional field from my sociology, criminology background, I really leveraged it a lot to figure out how to make it work and how to be successful. I was there for several years and used that experience on the financial side to end up with JP Morgan Chase. It was a great experience at the collections agency. It was a small company, and moving to a big corporate office was extremely difficult. Your culture is different. You have in a small family-owned company, it's very casual. It's sweatpants every day. It's flip-flops in the summer. It's a good time. A bunch of kids that are fresh out of college just, hanging out, having a good time, to a company where you've got an HR. And you're like, okay, well, this is not acceptable, and we need to figure out how we're going to make this work. So that kind of shift and knowing how to shift the way that you interact with others, it all kind of draws upon the education that I got. And I found myself there. I've been there for about 7 years, and it's an unconventional field. It's an unconventional career based off of what my undergraduate degree is. But I find that every day I somehow draw upon what I learned here and make it work in my current situation.
So on my sheet here, it says that we're next going to talk about how you, early in your career, built your network for some of the experience you had. And anybody here to speak to that? Yeah.
So I think it's important. We have a networking theme, and I think it is important to network. There's no question about that. But you also have to produce. I think I want to be clear about that, so that the best thing you can do for your own career is achieve. People like to hire people that are achievement oriented, that actually go and are spectacular in what they do and get recognized for that work. Because ultimately, when you're going to be hired by somebody, they want to know, what are you going to do for them? So that's my first cautionary tale about networking. Networking is great, but you have to have substance before. And I think it's important that, you're here for a reason, and that's important. So I was really fortunate. When I was in the College of Arts and Sciences, I had a number of internships. My first one was with the Athens Court of Common Pleas Court, working for a judge. Great experience. I decided I didn't want to be an attorney.
Oh, no, you nailed it.
Yes, sorry. It was a lot of fun, but I didn't want to do that. And then I had an internship with the mayor of the city of Athens too, and that was pretty interesting too. And then I had an internship at the State House in Columbus, and it was a great experience. And in that internship, I spent the summer and really enjoyed the opportunity to work at the State House, and had lots of really practical experience. My first day in the office, I actually met with constituents and got to talk to them about what are their concerns and what do they want to talk to the senator about, and those kinds of things. So great opportunity to really roll up your sleeves and get to work. And I enjoyed that very much. And actually, at the end of that internship, I was asked to stay on for the fall. And I said, well, I really can't, because I have to go back to school, and I'm subleasing somebody's apartment that was going to Ohio State, and I don't have a place to live anymore. And they said, well, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. So I was actually hired on as a senatorial aide. I was 20 years old, and was a senatorial aide, and actually lived with 3 state senators in their condo downtown Columbus.
That's awesome.
So I got paid. I lived for free, and it was just a great experience. So it was a really good experience. And then the next summer, actually spent in Washington D.C. and lots of great experience. I worked for a congressman on Capitol Hill. Great experience. So I really enjoyed those opportunities. And they came about as a result of networking with my professors at the college. And Mark Weinberg who now, I think he's getting ready to retire now, but he's
Mark will never retire.
so, he's leading the Voinovich School now, but he started the internship program, which was very successful. And I feel lucky to be one of those early folks on that internship train. And it gave me a lot of really practical experience. And it came about just talking to my professor about what are things that I might like to do and what are some opportunities to pursue internships. So that's my brief thought anyways.
I'm only 30, and I graduated in 2012. So in terms of building your professional network, I get in many ways where many of you probably are in terms of why start now? I'm just in school. I don't need to get a job, at least not right now, or maybe you're not thinking about it. But there's something that he said, there's actually a few things that Steve said that really resonated with me, one of which was his pure enthusiasm over this university. I mean, the four of us are here because we absolutely love OU. During my time as a congressional staffer, I was in charge of an internship program. If I saw an OU resume, I hired them just because they were Bobcats. And I may ask them what their favorite bar was and have a lot of really nostalgic moments about what it meant to live here and be a part of this community. So in terms of starting your professional network, you're making a mistake immediately if you let the four of us walk out of this room without you establishing a relationship with us, because we're obviously here because we want to be, and we love this school. In terms of, what is the value and what is networking, I think you're also making a mistake if you're approaching it purely as getting a job. I had an opportunity to hear what many of you are doing and what you're studying. Perhaps political science doesn't seem like a natural fit to you. But in politics, it's kind of my job to know everyone. And it doesn't matter your ideology. So even if you hear that I work for Democrats, I live in Columbus and I'm the president of a Democratic club. I know all the Republicans. So it may not always seem as though like we have or know the person, or maybe I can't hire you or lead you to that job. But whether it was hiring my interns or connecting with students, I always look for who's somebody I want to hang out with all the time, and who's somebody I like. And I think that that's something that you should think about when you're approaching networking. Is it's not necessarily I'm doing this because I hope you will help me get a job. Instead, it's you're interesting and I want to sit across from you and learn about you. And maybe someday that relationship can become tangible or helpful. I, like Steve, my career built off externships, unpaid opportunities facilitated through my school led me to having the network I needed to get a job in a congressional office, which in politics, it's a little incestuous. They're very loyal. They like to know people. We like to have an understanding of your commitment to whatever cause it is. So my advice for you would be that, especially early out, it's never too soon. And I spoke for the Women and Gender Studies program at Homecoming a year and a half ago about LGBT advocacy and the work I do in Columbus and throughout the state for LGBT rights. And I imparted on all of them about not only effective advocacy, but if this is something that you care about, if this is an issue that you care about, I'm here not only because I care about this issue, but I'm here because I love this school. And if you want to do this kind of work, please get my information and stay in touch with me. I mommy the hell out of every young person I meet, and I try very hard to network them, in many reasons because I'm first generation college. I was homeless in high school. I get what it means to have somebody looking out for you, and I want to be that person looking out for you. So don't think I'm too busy. Don't think I don't want to, and don't be afraid to ask, and don't approach it purely as I want you to help me get a job. Just take an interest in people, be friendly, be kind.
You said the right word, because of everything that's said, the key word for me in everything I've ever done is friendship. And friendship doesn't mean that you're expecting something on the other end of it other than friendship. And everything I've ever done or tried to do and do now is based on that. And even when I am in court battling the other side, I try to be friends with my opposing counsel. There's no reason why you can't cooperate. There's no reason why you can't be friendly. I've actually established some really good friendships with people who I fought all the way throughout the courts on the other side. And whether I won or they won, that's not the point. It's our interaction, our interrelationships. And it's never too early to start. I'll just going to give you one vignette of a networking thing that worked for me in the course of my career, but there's many things that preceded it and many that have come since that. I was directing a migrant legal services project in the Connecticut River Valley out of Hartford, and my territory went into western Massachusetts up to Greenfield, and it was all the tobacco fields. They grow the wrapper tobacco for famous cigars there. And Massachusetts is one of 4 states that had a statute and regulations authorizing access to migrant farm worker labor camps, meaning that the workers who were living wherever they were living had a right to have visitors, and it was done by statute and regulations. Well, I had a paralegal, and I drafted a Know Your Rights farm worker pamphlet, and I had the paralegal go up to the labor camps in Massachusetts to distribute them. Well, the growers didn't like that very much. They say, this is our private property, get the hell off our land. And she got thrown off. And so it came back to me, so I then made a telephone call to 2 people I already had met in Massachusetts and Boston. One was the legal director for the ACLU, and the other was an assistant attorney general in the attorney general's office in the civil rights division. And I worked with both of them on a case. We didn't bring the case. The growers brought a lawsuit in federal court saying this is a taking of property without due process of law in violation of our rights. They had hired a really fancy Philadelphia law firm to do it. So the 3 of us worked on the case. The ACLU legal director and I worked on the First Amendment right of access to labor camps from the old company town concept of a case from the 30s called Marsh v. Alabama, that if it looked like a town where people were living, then the people who were living there had a right to visitors. And they talked about the outline of streets in the town, a post office, a grocery store, all the attributes of the old logging industries company towns. So we worked on that issue. The Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Rights Division worked on defending the statute from the standpoint of police powers of the state to regulate public health. We won the case unanimously. It wasn't in federal court, it was in the state Supreme Court. Supreme Judicial Court. It was the highest state court in Massachusetts. And the justice who wrote the opinion was the first woman ever appointed to that court, Ruth Abrams. And it all came down on police powers. So the Attorney General's argument carried the day. But as a result of that, the 2 of them knew the quality of my work. They knew me. They knew that I was dedicated, I was hardworking, persistent, and could help produce good results in my draftsmanship. And they happened to see an opening in Boston at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. They told me about it. I used both of them as a reference. I got the job, but I was there for 18 years. So that's just one vignette of, I wasn't working on this case with the intent of coming to Boston. I didn't even know that there was a job opening. And in fact, at the time, there wasn't any job opening, but it turned out that one got created. And unfortunately, the one who was in the Assistant Attorney General's office, he and I became really good friends, and he then became a judge. And unfortunately, a few years ago, he died of brain cancer because the courthouse that he was working in was filled with asbestos. And the guy who was the legal director of the ACLU at the time, he retired, but I still know him. His wife had been appointed a federal district court judge in Massachusetts, and she retired, and now she's teaching full-time at Harvard Law School, but we're all close. But the point is that it's friendship. And that is so important when you start out. Maybe you don't know anybody other than people here, so they're going to do something. Stay in touch. Keep up the relationship. What are you doing? Oh, I got this job here, or you got this job in the senator's office.
I'd love to piggyback off that. So just from within my small circle of friends that are student athletes. One of them is appearing on the Today Show once a month and is an editor with Women's Health. Another one got the ad for the national women's soccer team during the World Cup. Another one's been featured on NPR to do broadcasting or be a brand expert for politics. We were all just buddies at OU, and sometimes it kind of is funny to me that we're all such responsible adults, but
Going off of, she said about friends, I will say that your first network are your friends here. So those are the relationships that you want to cultivate and you want to take with you when you walk off of this campus on graduation day, which will be the saddest day of your life. My friends were my first network. They were the only network that I knew. When you're in college, the last thing that you think that you need to do is build relationships with people who have graduated a long time ahead of you. And that is true to an extent. I think this opportunity right here is breaking down that wall, and it's helping to, I think, will make people comfortable in approaching. And it's called a network for a reason. It's not about my relationship with you. It's about you and I connecting and who I know in my network that I can connect you with. So try to think beyond the initial connection and the initial relationship and beyond that. There are a lot of people that I have met and I have found myself in different career paths because they knew a friend of mine. And the friend of mine had recommended me because she knew the kind of person I was. So it really does start grassroots at your friend level. I'm sitting here today because of a friend of mine from OU who said, hey, would you ever be interested? And I was like, absolutely, I'll do anything I can for this school and for arts and sciences majors. It's a tough major to come out of college with if you don't go to grad school, or if you don't really know if you want to go to grad school and you have this degree, and what am I going to do with it? What am I supposed to do with it? Oh, I guess I'm going to go to law school, or I'm going to go to grad school, or I'm going to keep going to school till I can find something that's going to pay me. Those are absolutely great paths to go, but you don't necessarily have to take those paths just to figure it out.
Yeah, I'd like that. Alan talked about friendship, and I think that it is at the core of networking. So I'll have to tell you a funny story. Back when I was in school, when the dinosaurs roamed the earth many years ago, and before Al Gore had invented the internet, we had at the college placement office, there would be companies that would say they're coming on campus on X and such dates, and they would be interviewing for certain candidates in certain kinds of fields. And it was very manual. So there was actually like a sign-up sheet. You had to sign up, put your name down, and then later on, that sheet got typed up by somebody, probably on a typewriter actually, and printed. They put the paper out, and it would have the schedule, and it would tell you, who you're interviewing with and what time. And it was like posted the day before the interviews, I think. And so I go and I look at the placement office, and I see that I'm registered with a company called United Telecommunications, Inc., and worse yet, they're interviewing for computer scientists and accountants. So I thought, well, I must have signed on the wrong line or something. Somehow this got transposed. And I didn't know what to do. So I decided, well, I'll go to the interview. And I remember sitting across the table from the guy, and his name's Dale Kuzer. I remember it to this day. I said, Dale, I think I made a mistake. I have several different problems. The first problem is that I don't know who United Telecommunications Inc. is. I've never heard of you guys. The second problem, probably more significant, is that I see you're hiring for accountants and computer scientists, and I just hope to never be confused with those people. And I said, if you want to go ahead with the interview.
I'm not sure this is a generally good thing to do in an interview.
I'm not sure.
But let's hear.
Being honest, honest with
But
him.
I'm sure your authenticity
Yes.
made you very charming.
So Dale looked at his watch, and it was a long, pregnant pause, and he says, Steve, I'm not doing anything for the next 45 minutes. Let's just have a conversation. As it turns out, they have a management development program that he wasn't on campus to interview for. And he said, you would be a great candidate for that role. And I was hired by this company into their management development program. And that company became Sprint. So So I had a 22-year career with Sprint before I work for Luxottica now. And it was a great career. And it happened as a result of having a friendly conversation with someone. So great segue.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I may, I think that for me is something that is a bit of a theme, which is just putting yourself out there. So this, showing up here, showing up when there are opportunities, because it's really easy, in a day-to-day way to say, I think I'll watch TV, or I'll do something that's a little less risky in terms of, the possible embarrassment of someone saying, yeah, what the heck are you doing here? But I think that's not uncommon then for people to have these kind of tales.
It's a very small world, and the world continues to get smaller. Now with the internet, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of that, it shrinks every day. And even though somebody may be on the other side of the country or in a different country, you may get to know them through one of these services. And you never know where it goes.
We were talking briefly about the value of social media, so I'm going to tell you about my social media strategies. I'm a candidate for office this year. So part of my lead up into running was, of course, establishing relationships with people that get it and who could support me, not just in terms of money, which is really important, but volunteering or connecting me with people in the community where I'm running. I have slowly been adding on Facebook over the course of a few years any person I see who has more than 50 mutual friends on Facebook who are all Democrats. And now we comment and share on each other's walls. I don't know if I've ever met these people in person, but when I run, I guarantee that those are people who are going to take interest in what I'm doing and could potentially be supportive. I've never met them face to face. Another thing that I would encourage you guys to do is not limit yourself in terms of your location. So you've already heard a couple of folks talk about how they've taken internships and opportunities outside of Athens. There's more here than you probably realize, particularly in social sciences. This is a community that's really rich in terms of support services, and the Athens community really needs a lot of help. So I hope you'll take advantage of things that are offered through the school. All of that being said, I met with a swimmer today who is interested in, journalism and the intersection of, social movements and journalism and writing and music and all of this stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't really know any of those people, but I know a lot of people that are editors of magazines in Columbus, and I'm going to connect you. Are you sure you want me to do that? Well, yeah. Well, if I do it, are you actually going to email them? Because once I do that, it's a reflection on my relationship too. You better follow up. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, great. Now, you're probably not going to be able to get down to Columbus. You're a student athlete. You're very busy. You may not even have a car if you live here in Athens. So when you follow up with them, make sure that you're asking to schedule a call, not an in-person meeting, because you shouldn't allow months to go by after this initial introduction before you're establishing some kind of relationship. So just because you can't necessarily physically meet somebody who may be interesting, we're establishing friends, we're not necessarily, cashing in on the relationships yet, but just because you can't physically get to where they are, don't allow that to limit you, and don't keep your communication purely online if you can avoid it. So schedule a call. There's no reason to say, well, I'm here, you're there. I guess we'll wait until our paths cross. Don't do that.
So I wonder if I might ask you to talk a little bit about your liberal arts background and the way that you feel like that's played out in your life.
I'd like to talk about that. Because when I came here, I wanted to major in economics, but everything in economics was connected to the business part of it. And I didn't want that. I knew way back then that's not what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew also what I did want to do with my life. And it wasn't about business, but I loved economics. It sprung from high school even. It explains the way the world works, but I wanted to study it in liberal arts. And so I guess I said earlier in the talk that I gave at 1 o'clock that I just was persistent. You know, they kept saying, you got to take this course and that course and that. My interest not only was in economics, but it was liberal arts, and I graduated with the same number of credit hours in English as I had in economics, but not the right courses for a dual major. I took history of painting and sculpture. I took history of architecture. I took a lot of things that interested me, that continue to interest me. I can go to museums and I'll remember what I learned in that course. I did a project for the history of architecture where I went into Manhattan and took pictures of St. Patrick's Cathedral and Grace Church and tried to write about the differences in the Gothic architecture between the two. Went into my darkroom, developed the pictures, put it together, a photo essay for the class. I loved it, and every time I see architecture, bingo, that course springs to mind. It was liberal arts that interested me. Economics was an extremely important piece of it, part of it, and it continues to be, and I've used it in my work as a lawyer all these many years. Understanding macroeconomic theory, microeconomic theory continues to work into my cases. And I was talking earlier upstairs or in the other building about I was co-counsel for the plaintiffs in the Massachusetts school finance litigation for some 23 years. And all of that was about economics, primarily microeconomic theory.
I mean, I work in politics, so being a poli-sci major turned out great for me. When I came to Ohio University, I really didn't understand how college worked. I took a lot of those classes they give to the dumb jocks so that we don't fail out, you know, career planning and how to study classes. So I spent the good part of about 1.5 years just taking classes all over the place, trying to get a better idea of what I wanted to major. Because again, I didn't really think about going to school as these are the classes that'll help me learn the skill to do a job. I just kind of thought that happens when it's all said and done and somebody comes and finds me. So I mean, my first political science class, it was like the fireworks went off. I just really gravitated toward that information. I found it really interesting. I still find there's never been a more interesting time to work in politics. And I still find the intersections of people and how group dynamics and power and community is still all very interesting to me. So in terms of your education and how it fits into the big picture, I think my advice based on my experience would be to allow things like internships or jobs and part-time jobs even as a way to kind of figure out the what do you want to do part of it. I took a little piece of every externship I ever did and it helped me formulate I really don't want to be a lawyer thing while I was in law school. But during my undergrad, that's when I first formulated my love of learning. And I'm really glad I had that experience because I haven't had it since. And that includes 3 years of law school where you just felt really entrusted in like what was being presented to you. So in terms of like the value of my liberal arts education, for me, it's not only been great in my career and how it helps me understand dynamics of politics, but it was the first time I actually loved learning. And you're really not going to have many other chapters in your life where you get to do that. So yes, this is a panel about networking. We want to help you all get jobs that you love and careers that you enjoy. But I found that happened for me as a result of networking, ironically. But the externships and practical work experience I did, not so much the education, although the education's been valuable. So I would say, find what works for you, but don't be turned away from taking or signing up for a certain course that you think might be interesting just because you're afraid of the practicality of it out in the real world. You just never know.
So I ended up a sociology major because I think you still have to declare by the end of your sophomore year, I think. Okay, so it was end of sophomore year, hadn't declared a major. My friends were in retail, another friend was in education. So at that point in time, the Health and Human Services was on West Green, I think, because they were building Grover. I lived on East and Gam, and I was like, I do not want to walk all the way over to West Green. So I'm not going to be a retail major to turn in my paper. What's the next? Oh, Arts and Sciences, right there, College Green, nice and close on my way to class. There we go. And that is kind of my first, that is, I think, my first experience with things that kind of happen for a reason that you don't realize they're happening. Had the Health and Human Services College been closer, I never would have majored in sociology. So from that point on, I took 2 full years of my liberal arts in the social school in sociology, and all my friends were learning how to properly fold a piece of paper to fit in an envelope, or how to use a proper amount of glitter on a poster board for their early education classes. I was reading 900 pages a night and writing papers, and I'm like, why? Why did I do this? Why? It made me appreciate people and society. And I know it sounds kitschy to say this, but I really do feel like I got a degree in life. And you know how your interactions with people are different when you have that kind of liberal arts background. I come from a small town in Northeast Ohio that is in the middle of the Rust Belt and is truly still trying to work its way back from like 1985. It's hard, and they are the epitome of the disappearing middle class up there. They are rooted deep in steel and auto industry, and there's not a lot of experience outside of their own communities. So with my background and my education and the courses that I took, that just kind of gave you a little insight into that and into how those types of communities think and interact together. I was able to come back home and still have relationships with people who hadn't experienced a tenth of what I did just by going away to school. Because I understood that it wasn't, their attitudes weren't personal, their opinions weren't, they aren't terrible people because they're, strong right-wing conservatives. I mean, it's about appreciating others. So I think that with the liberal arts background that I got here, and I couldn't quote one professor, I can't quote one class, I couldn't tell you my favorite class. I do know that overall the experience that I had here just really made me a better person, and it made me be able to relate to a lot of different people.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the value of the liberal arts education is that we're well-rounded. There is a reason why we have the disciplines that we want to study. The other thing is we can articulate our ideas clearly because we know how to communicate. And that is that's a key advantage that you want to take, make sure that you can display, that you have the ability to form your thoughts clearly, and then you can articulate them verbally or in writing. We actually know how to write. That's a nice skill. It's surprising how many people don't have that skill. Yes, it is true. The other thing is, demonstrate some passion. What do you love to do? Get involved with that. And then it just shows. I can tell you that right now I have a great job. I'm leading e-commerce for Luxottica, the world's largest optical company. So you might not have heard of Luxottica, maybe you've heard some of our brands, Oakley, Ray-Ban, Sunglass Hut, Lens Crafters. So those are, some key optical brands. And I had no idea that I was going to be doing this job, really just even a year ago. I've been working for Luxottica for the past 10 years. And I was actually doing some networking with some of our senior leaders at the company. And I was leading organizational change management for our largest ever capital project. And I didn't even know what organizational change management was when I was asked to lead this for the project, but it is about getting people ready for change. And that project was winding down, and I started talking with some of our senior leaders about things that I'm passionate about, things that I'm interested in. And then I asked them a very important question, and that is, what are the challenges that they see ahead of them? And what are things that they could use some help with? Well, it's really interesting because a few months after those conversations, I get a call from the president of my division. He said, well, I think we've got an interesting job for you. And it's the job that I'm in now, and it was developed because of those conversations. And I have a passion about our customers and the customer's experience. And there's certainly an intersection around what's happening with e-commerce now. And how do we drive that? So it was just a great fit, but it was because I demonstrated an interest around that a role was created that would be appropriate for those. It is an intersection of my interest and what the company needed. It's a win-win. So
I just wanted to add one thing that occurred to me during this conversation. And you just have to look at the newspaper or the news every single day to know that we're living in a time period where a lot of fear is going on. And that fear extends to education. I just read in the newspaper, was it last week, that there's a small college in New Hampshire called, I think it's Colby College, that is eliminating English and philosophy as majors. Why? Because there's such pressure for graduates to get jobs, and who's going to get a job as an English major or a philosophy major, other than perhaps driving a cab, but not in New Hampshire. And that kind of fear has been going on in this country, in our culture, for a long, long time. Maybe I was oblivious to it, because it probably existed when I was going to school too, but thank God I was oblivious to it. But it's been apparent, and everybody's talking about, well, what kind of a job is at the end of this 4 years of education with a big price tag, and as loans go up into $200,000 for 4 years or something, who's going to pay it off? And you got to get a really high-paying job, and there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure for even people who go to law school. Same thing.
I'll talk you out of it. I think that's why I'm on this panel.
And I mean, I'm only lucky because when I went to school here, I was an out-of-state student. I was from New Jersey, and out-of-state students had to pay double tuition, so we had to pay $1,000 a year for tuition. So, times have surely changed, and maybe, there's certain amount of obliviousness to the issue of money and earning and all, and paying bills and all of that I had. But certainly I know that the pressure is out there on each of you to be able to pay off debts, and that puts pressure against liberal arts, because how many of you who are English majors are going to get a job teaching English at a university in this country? Odds are pretty much against you for that. And that's why, studying business says, oh, that's where the jobs are. But the important thing to me is to follow your passion. Many years ago, I think it was 1984, the journalist Bill Moyers did an interview with Joseph Campbell, who had written a number of books. He was a professor at Sarah Lawrence College. He was The Man with a Thousand Faces, a book like that. But anyway, he did this interview with Joseph Campbell about life, and he talked all about myth, Eastern religions that he taught about in college. So at the end of the interview, Bill Moyers said to him, Joe, what do you say to your students when they come to you and they say, what should I do after 4 years? And his words were very simply, follow your bliss, meaning go with whatever your passion is. And I tell my students, be happy, because life is too short. You don't know how fast these last 50 years have gone by since I graduated this place. It was yesterday I was here, and yet it's 50 years. Be happy, because if you're not doing something you like, get out of it and do something else. If you could put 4 years into here and 3 years into law school and then discover, I don't want to be a lawyer, well, then do something else. That's what's important, being happy.
I mean, I certainly want to sympathize with that pressure because I'm living in it. But, if financial pressure is a problem, please take advantage of the advice you can get in counseling on student loans while you're here. I took out the max amount every semester in law school. Boy, what a mistake that was. So even if you are somebody like most Americans who have to take out some kind of financial aid to get through college. Again, don't allow it to drive your decisions while you're in school and what happens after. I totally agree with Alan that you should do what you love. But if that's real, I mean, you do want to be able to pay off your debt and you do want to be able to have some standard of living after school, but be very, very careful with debt. Be very careful with the amount of loans you're taking out. And for the love of God, take advantage of help. I mean, you don't want to be me working $50,000 a year job with $250,000 in debt, limiting your options because, God, if I don't get public sector loan forgiveness, I'm going to die with my debt. And that's the reality of the job market. But again, would I do it any differently in terms of my education and what I do for my job? Absolutely not. Would I have taken out as much money? Definitely not. So that would be my kind of advice, is that I acknowledge in a very real way that is real for all of you. But just be smart about your money. Maybe don't go out 3 nights a week, maybe 1. And maybe drink a lot at home before you go to the bar. Maybe get a part-time job. I could have coached in law school and that could have been my spending cash. There's little stuff that you can be doing. But go see a financial advisor. They're here. Take advantage of it. But, I did read a Forbes article that said that most execs have liberal arts education. So I don't really buy into the whole, you need to have a degree in business to excel in business. And I meet with small business owners all day, every day.
Yeah. Now, I just want to put my 2 cents in before you have Alan come up around this. I think the thing that's changed is that probably when Alan was graduating, simply having the degree was a door opening because there were so few people that had college degrees. And much of the corporate world was totally on board with training because it was more lifetime employment sort of attitudes. That's what's changed. And the reason we're having this conversation, which is unusual in a College of Arts and Sciences, is you can't just sort of blithely go by now. You have to have more of a plan to think about steps, to take advantage of opportunities somewhat earlier. But I feel no hesitation to recommend English, which, by the way, is a very good choice because English majors can write, which is an extraordinary valuable skill. Or I have to tell you, we had a presentation by a president of a technology company that's doing online education now, and she happened to mention in passing that she was a philosophy major. And but you can't simply assume that degree is going to be the ticket. You have to be doing things like this. So I want to transition here. We have our expert coming in to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing, hopefully if you transition to the ballroom here. So I'm going to turn things over to Alan.
Thanks, Dean. So my name is Alan Mcmillan. I am blessed that I get to, I'm a Bobcat, got out in 75, okay. And then I'm blessed that I have an opportunity to teach in the College of Arts and Science. There's a new class that it's called Transitions from Campus to Career Success to Wealth Creation and Protection. So the whole gambit, how do you go from campus to career to financial independence? And I have a small boutique firm that I do that gets me to travel at colleges all over America. They asked me to speak today about networking, and I think it's, first off, it's terrific that you're here. Because, it means you got your ears open and you really have an opportunity to take your game to the next level. And I want to give you some facts about that. First off, why this is so important, and I commend the College of Arts and Science for doing this, because this today can literally change your life. And this whole week's worth of events can be life-changing for you. First off, 2 generations ago, so your grandparents, my parents, my dad had 1 job, but the people typically had 1 to 2 jobs. And Dean Frank talked about some of the dynamics that have changed, and it's absolutely spot on. And my generation, the baby boom, 10.6 jobs, according to the Department of Labor. That's an estimate. We're not done yet. I'm 61. Okay, and then your generation, the only data I could find was Heidrick & Struggles, the global search firm, and they estimate that you're going to have 17 jobs over the course of your career. So whether that's a job or roles within a company, you've got to think of your next assignment as a 2 to 4 year stepping stone. So the acquisition of the next stepping stone becomes critical to your career success. And it also becomes critical to your financial success, because you don't want any periods where you don't have employment, because then that will hurt your long-term finances. So all this thing is tied together. And then the other element is that of all the people that get a degree, half start with a job that required a degree, and the other half start out, at least initially, or underemployed. Okay, so the key is, while you're here, how are you going to exercise these skills in order to go ahead and be on the right side of the outcomes that you want? And that's what tonight can be, today and tonight can be. And then you have, which is great, alums are coming to give back, and I hope one day you're sitting up giving back. This is the absolute example of what needs to be done, so we can help people who follow where we're going. So if you think about a job search, if this is becoming critical, first, it's who you are, your brand. And it's not looking good on social media. It's about being good, being more employable every semester, being more employable every year you're with a company, that you're more sought after in your field. Always taking your game to the next level. No more coasting. The days of coasting are gone. Okay? And then you plug who you are into your network, who you know and who they know. And it's the notion about how do you build, nurture, and serve your network, and in turn, how that's the big game changer in your career. So if you take a look at that, so now if the two big elements of job search, and I'm going to go through this landscape of maybe potentially 17 jobs if Heidrick and Struggles is right, well then how do you take your game to the next level? And if networking is important, I can tell you that after, I talked about 3,000 students live a year, and they're horrible at networking. You know, so if you think, I don't think I've got this well thought out, you're just normal, okay? And the key to going to an event like this, you want to become abnormal over time. You want, or another way you put it, be exceptional. So the thing is, I'll give you an example. If your network can change your life, where do you keep your contacts? So how about everyone who has Microsoft Office and Microsoft Word knows how to use it? Raise your hand. Okay, that's everybody. How many have Microsoft Excel and know how to use it? Okay. How many have PowerPoint and know how to use it? Okay, now you've just confessed to me that you have Microsoft Office. Now the question for the students, okay. How many of you, to make the prime lens to see your emails, your contacts, and your calendar, use Microsoft Outlook? Okay, that's great, that's great, that's unusual, okay? So you have the repository there, and where do you put these contacts? And let's talk about what I hope you do tonight, and don't miss the opportunity in the ballroom. Again, this is where you become aware now, and that promotes action, and then action repeated over time, and you have a friendly environment to go ahead and exercise these things, which can absolutely be game-changing. So if you, by the way, 93% of the time when you start a new job, you will have Microsoft Office given to you, so you'll be using Outlook, and IT will give you that for support. So it's probably the best one for you to do, but if you want to use Google Contacts, I'm fine with that as well. And you've got plenty of contacts here. So what are the standard operating procedures? And they've done these beautiful little crib sheets, okay? And let's just walk our way through theirs a little bit. First off, the notion of business cards. This is really great. Because you know what happens when you hand a professional a business card? There's a natural reaction. They hand you their card back. Now you've got their contact information. This is great. If you go up to them and you don't have anything, you go, can I have your contact information? It's kind of creepy, okay? But if you go ahead and you give one, you get one, that's terrific. Then you have a short conversation. Now you've got this conversation, and and then what you do when you leave the conversation, get out of sight of the person you just met. Go out in the hall or somewhere out of sight and jot down a couple of points that you talked about. So you have some context when you follow up, okay? That's the next step. So now within 12 hours, it's different if you follow up in 2 months or even that 2 days from now. You follow up by the time these folks are checking their emails tonight. If all of a sudden there's an email from you and say, by the way, it was great meeting you. Thanks so much for making the trip to Athens. By the way, you know, when you talked about this, I mean, it really resonated with me and it made a difference. And I'll tell you what I pledge to do. I pledge to give back like you did when I get as successful as you are, and I'll come back to the college. They will never forget you, okay? And then what happens is, where do you put that? You put their contact information in your repository, so Outlook or Google. You copy that email and you put it in the notes section. So now if in 5 years you're doing a job search and say, who am I going to call? Who do I know? Who am I going to call? And you find somebody from this event, and you look them up, and then you reach out to them. Now you say, well, you may not remember me, but I was at the College of Arts and Science networking event, and you spoke in February 2017. I actually followed up with a message, and then you wrote me back. It was really, really nice. Okay. Even if they don't remember you, they're going to lie and say, present company excludes, and they go, yeah, I do remember you. Okay. But what happens is you have enough there that you're out 95% going to go ahead and get a response. You see how that can be a career advantage if they're in the middle of a job search, you're trying to do some due diligence, you want to lean out on somebody? This is incredibly important. So the thing is, you can take an event and execute at the next level. And the difference between good and great is just a little bit. So how do you get that right tonight? And then the final thing on networking, when you haven't talked to someone in a while, you can go ahead and say, hey, by the way, let me just make sure I have your current address, your current email address, and your current, their best cell number. And then that way you can always get a hold of your network. And remember, do good things for your network. You know, there's friends tonight. One of the great things you can do is start to text some of your friends or put on social media that you're headed to the ballroom and this is a great event. You got to get there tonight. And maybe some of your friends who aren't here this afternoon, it'll change their life tonight. And then they'll remember you for that because it's people helping people. So with that, look, again, I think you're doing a great thing. I just wanted to give you some rudiments of it, but the fact is there's no better people to talk to you than people who have walked in the steps that you're walking in now, and now they're esteemed in their career. So listen, thank you very much, and I appreciate getting a few minutes. Cheers.
Thank you.
So we've got just a few minutes. Maybe you have some questions or reactions or whatever?
I kind of have a question. I went to undergraduate in Virginia, a smaller college, and I feel like as we said about building there. However, now I'm here, and I'm also thinking about switching fields. So I feel like I'm really starting from scratch, and I feel just making that first contact has been very difficult for me because I'm not an Ohioan, and I'm still new here, and I'm just wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about taking that first big step in a new place.
I'd be glad to address it. First of all, I was born in Virginia. I speak Southern, but I grew up in Ohio. People are really, most people want to help other people. And so the asking for help may feel difficult, but most people want to say yes. It's how you ask and what you ask for. So the biggest mistake people make when they think they're networking is asking for a job. Because the probability that the person you're asking has a job that fits your exact, requirements and your skill set is very low. But asking for help, people 95% of the time are going to say yes. Hey, I wonder if I could set up 30 minutes to have a chat with you about career options in XYZ field. Do that with some of the folks in your college, some of the professors. They can help then connect you with people that might have jobs, might have opportunities, or might have ideas for you to think about what kind of field you want to be involved in. It's great to actually go talk to those people. I don't know what field you're interested in, but I'm sure Dean Bob Frank here could help you. He can help connect the dots.
I want to say one thing about Steve. Right here, you have these faculty who, that's why they're in this work, because they are dedicated to you. And this is one of the tasks I talk to actually at Bobcat orientation to new parents and students about what's your plan to get those 3 references, minimum 3, that you're going to need. And it's taking those kind of steps. But I'm a first-generation college student. That professor was like way up there. And I had to learn that my interest, my passion was such a ticket. So when I got excited, which I did, we took a particular course. For me, it was a philosophy. I was pre-med, was going through the pre-med death march, as we call it. And I didn't like it. It was cutthroat. I love science. I became a scientist, but I took a philosophy course, and I loved it. And so it was easy for me to then talk to the professor about that. So when you can do that, that shines through. That passion shines through. And especially when people are already doing that kind of work, they're going to eat that up. So it's all set up. Now, it's not always going to be that easy. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. But the faculty, for you who are here, are tremendous resource for that kind of work.
I'd love to say a couple of things. The first being that I have to echo what he said, is that there's a difference between asking for something and asking for help. I've had students from my law school alma mater, I serve on our alumni relations board, who were really interested in politics. They were like me in that, shoot, I'm doing this law school thing, but I'm really interested in public service. And I would be giving them advice on how to navigate, and I'd be like, well, I'm happy to facilitate all these introductions for you, and I'll do all of this for you. And his response to me was, well, what is that going to do for me? What does it do for me? And I remember how rubbed off I felt, because I guess my time's not valuable. That what a rude comment and gesture in terms of I'm offering to do something to you. So gratitude is always something that goes a really long way, even if it doesn't seem like it makes sense. If somebody's offering you help of any kind, I think that's really great. And in terms of my networking trajectory and working in politics, one thing I've noticed I'm assuming you're in your early 20s. One thing I've noticed, I'm 30, folks in their early 20s are way more likely to admit that they don't know something. And I find that really refreshing. When I was figuring it all out, I didn't want anyone to know I didn't know. And it took me so much longer because I was too embarrassed to let the cat out of the bag that I actually have no idea what I'm doing. So that's another thing I think is helpful in terms of how you're approaching a conversation. And the other final thing I would say is that I actually joked with somebody. I'm I don't know how I keep getting invited to these alumni panels. I can't wait until they don't figure out I'm not that big of a deal. But I know that when you're the student and we're the people with the jobs and we're on the alumni panel, that we might seem like we're too busy or we don't care, or why would we be interested in you? Don't even ask those kinds of questions to yourself. We are here because we care. So I think that that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is that they don't feel like they're worthy enough to ask for help, or that the person on the receiving end of the ask for help they're not going to be interested in me. So I really appreciate your question. I really appreciate your humility. And I would just say, have confidence in that you're a big deal too, and that we want to be a part of you figuring it out.
We want the credit.
I do take a lot of credit for bobcats that do big things. That mommy.
I just want to add 2 things. In your new field, whatever it is, there are undoubtedly professors here who are teaching it. And maybe one of them is your advisor. I had an advisor when I started here in economics, and he helped me a good deal, just answering dumb questions, and no question is dumb. And there are other fellow students with you who are also in that field. Maybe they've always wanted to be in that field, and maybe they're new to it as you are. Just talk to them, have conversations, go out for a beer. Whatever it is you do, just, talk. Know them, form friendships. And it's not in mind that you're going to get a job out of it, but it's just going to help you think through what you want to do, where you want to go to, and how you want to get there. And they're all leads, because you don't know it all, unlike my generation who knew it all. Why bother with the question if we know it all, right? you at least have the refreshing knowledge that you don't know it all, and you're not afraid to engage in a conversation and ask for information. And no question is dumb. And just keep at it.
Engage your alumni association. I was part, so you mentioned the OUAA, and when I was in an undergrad, I was part of Student Alumni Board. And I didn't take advantage of it nearly enough. I didn't take advantage of meeting with my professors or advisors nearly enough either. I was, in 4 years here, it was about college. It wasn't about what I was going to do after college. That was not a concern. So when I graduated, I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I had really kind of, I don't want to say blown the last probably year and a half here, but just really didn't, there's so many resources here if you just ask for it, and you're really expected to be an adult. Nobody's going to come to you and say, here, come talk to me and let me tell you how things are going to go. You have to really grow up and take charge of your future. So I would encourage, talking to your professors, asking them. I was never an outgoing person in college. I had my friends, but I just, doing this when I was in college, no way, not happening, not in a million years. So I think that if you're on that side of where you're just not, you don't like to initiate the conversation, but you're more than happy to participate, talk to your professors about maybe linking you up with somebody who is in your classes, who is the outgoing personality. They know who that person is, no doubt. And they can organize a coffee date, something like that, something where you can sit and talk and get those perspectives. But alumni associations too, nobody wants anything. Those people who are involved in your alumni associations are true and bleed green and white and want nothing more than to help Bobcat succeed. And like she'd said, when I see OU on a resume, I mean, that's your foot in the door, and those are your relationships that you build. So alumni association where your undergrad was at, alumni association here, there's chapters all over the country, and it's just a matter of just getting involved.
Lisa, are we at an end here?
More questions. I've got nothing but time
Any?
for you all. I didn't mean to just saddle all of you, though. I'm sorry. I just find this very exciting.
I got something. One important thing that I like what you said in particular is how we kind of live in an age of fear, how a lot of people are afraid. I think it's important as a undergrad student especially, optimistic about your future. And as for me, like as an econ major, I'm a bit of a skeptical optimist, I guess, in terms of how things are happening. I just want to say that was a very
Yeah, I mean, the media in this country just promotes it. They deliver that message, and it's not an accurate message. Sure, the fear is being promoted, but there's a reason behind that. They want a compliant society who will do what they're told, or who will do what they think should be expected of them. And then there's the few people who will say, no, not me. And so who will you be? And, I never wanted to work in a big law firm. I never wanted to work for a big corporation. I just wanted to do what I had in my vision, my passion. That's what I wanted to do. And I've been lucky to be able to have followed it. And I agree. Money is a real big issue today that it wasn't for me. I didn't mention earlier, throughout undergraduate school and law school, I had one loan. It was for $1,500 my senior year here, and it took me 9 years to pay that back. I was paying, I think, $33 a month, and
Not that you remember any of that.
and that was told that was told for the 2 years I was in Bolivia in the Peace Corps.
Oh, and I think anybody who's sitting here as a social sciences major is not majoring in it for the money. Those are our friends down in Copeland, who you guys are really truly looking for something that's going to be your passion. You have some sort of passion or real great interest, and it's not about what you're going to graduate with. You're not looking for that $90,000 a year job as a 23-year-old, because A, you're not going to find it. They're not going to find it. So do what you love and love what you do.
Having a positive outlook and being optimistic is really infectious. People want to be around people that are like that. So hats off to you. Be optimistic and stay that way.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. So it's that optimism and that passion shining through. That's the ticket. I mean, people that have that regardless of what they've decided to do in terms of some trajectory.
Don't get diverted by all the craziness thrown at you to scare you or put you in fear. My generation was the protest generation. So protest it and rebel against it and go your own way and don't let anybody, follow Robert paths of the road not taken. You follow your own road and go and fulfill what you want to do in your life.
Alan's generation's my favorite. Just want to say that. What I will add is that you should be very thankful if you're in the arts and sciences school that you're actually getting coursework that's going to help you challenge the fear. Particularly in this election cycle, anytime there was any kind of identity politics, I always went back to my arts and sciences education, particularly my sociology classes, and about how we lump groups of people. And that happened on each side of the aisle. I mean, like how you stereotype a Trump voter and a Hillary voter. So even when you're meeting people that are intersecting with fear or fear of others, there's so much value in what you're learning right now and how that can help you with like kind of rationalizing people. And being able to critically think about what it is you're consuming, particularly the 24-hour news cycle. I mean, they won't.
Enough said. Okay, do we need to? All right, so we should thank our panelists.